Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Where's our host?
Henry Jaglom, everybody.
Michael Emil and Zach Norman must come right up here. As if they were swimming underwater. Isn't that something to see that? Whoa, what a trip. Personally, I haven't seen this in 30 years, I want you to know, so I'm stunned. What is it like for you? Look at this t-shirt.
First of all, just the origins of this movie, because the interesting thing about it is it has all your usual preoccupations in terms of being a kind of behavior-driven movie about relationships and all that, but it also has these kind of Hollywood movie conventions. I mean, it's a buddy road movie. You've got assassins and...
It's really simple to explain.
Okay.
I made two films that I think are excellent films. They both were poetic, non-conventional, non-linear, and I think if you look at them today, pretty significant pieces of work, but at the time, they were both dismissed, criticized violently. Safe Place opened at the New York Film Festival and half the audience booed, while the other half happily were cheering, but there was a lot of booing. And Time magazine said the film looked like the pieces had been thrown up in the air and landed in a mixmaster and randomly. It was violently attacked until Anais Nin discovered it 2 years later and started bringing it to college campuses for women as a study in certain things, and it started getting me my audience. I couldn't make a movie after that. Nobody would finance me. And I'd made this for a big studio for Columbia Pictures with big stars, Jack Nicholson and Orson Welles and Tuesday Welles. And this man, this strange man, who is not unlike the character he plays, I met him, and he hustled me thinking that I had the money for a film because I had made this other film, and I hustled him because I thought that he was a film producer and he was talking about it. And we went to Paris and hustled a third person who had the reputation, also with the name Henry, who had the reputation of being a French film producer, and we thought he had the money, and we all hustled each other until we discovered that none of us had the money to make a film. We came back to America, and he started raising money by going to doctors and to dentists and to small businessmen and raising 10,000 here, 15,000 there, for what became my second film, Tracks. My brother, this is my brother, in case a few of you might not know it, my big brother, not trusting him, and said he doesn't know how to spend money, he doesn't know, he trusted him that he wouldn't do anything dishonest, but he just said he spends, he'd give it, you see who he is. Right. So Michael said, I've got to be on the train with you on Tracks, doing the books and making sure. So Michael was, what was your title? Executive in charge of production. Executive in charge of production. He watched over the way Zach was spending the money. We made the movie for $500,000. We couldn't get it released. We had a terrible time. That's 2 movies now. So I decided, the hell with it. I'll make a silly movie. And I was watching them while we were making Tracks. And at one point we got desperate because of various things. And I said, you guys get in front of the camera. Just talk to each other the way you talk in life. Because they do this in life. And I didn't do that. They did it. And they started putting them on Tracks, and they were hysterical together. So while Tracks was going on in the back of my mind, I thought the next movie I'm going to do, especially if Tracks doesn't work, I'm going to stop with these art movies and this quality stuff of trying to break rules and so on. I'll just make an absurd, silly comedy with 2 of the weirdest, funniest people I know about what? About let's steal some money from the mob. I mean, And that's the genesis of this film. It was a deliberate attempt to make something that would be vaguely commercial after my name was completely mud in Hollywood for the 2. And it worked. It made a lot of money. It was very successful. I got phenomenal reviews. Everybody compared them to every great comedy team you've ever seen. And look what happened.
So when you're doing a movie with guys like this who are kind of riffing on their own personalities and stuff, do you have, what's the script like? Do you have a script? Do you have an outline?
There's a very thorough outline of scene by scene, There is no script. You don't write dialogue for these people. You just say you're in a hotel room together. He wants to go down to the bar and meet girls. You have to stop him because you're the responsible one who's trying to keep on the track.
And then we went and met girls.
No, you didn't.
Oh, yes.
Do you guys remember when Henry first came to you with this idea to do this movie?
I don't remember.
Well, I can't not remember because I was involved in the business aspects of producing the movie.
So he does remember. My brother's always.
I don't think this thing is.
It's on.
He's right that I didn't trust Zach because I certainly trusted him to spend money, but I didn't trust him to be responsible with what to do with money to produce a movie. So I got involved in it, and that's why I was on the train. And I never thought in terms of acting, but Henry said to me, just sit there and talk to Zach the way you usually do. Maybe I'll film you, maybe I won't film you. And then we got.
Then we fell in love.
Oh yeah, as you see in the bathtub.
The bathtub scene. Let me tell you about the bathtub scene. The bathtub scene. My brother has always had a very strong discomfort.
Homophobic.
Let's not call it that.
Silly terminology.
He's always had a strong discomfort with naked men being too close to him.
Especially in a tub.
In a small, narrow area. And so I said to him, you're trying to go take this girl and convince her to go to bed with you. So in this next scene, you're in the bathtub and you're doing your exercises with your little hand thing. And he had a thing. And she is going to come in, sit on the edge of the tub, and you're going to try to persuade her. He said, okay. And I said, but you have to remember two things as an actor. It's very important. One thing is you don't leave the tub. Why would I leave the tub? I said, just remember, you can't leave no matter what happens. The other thing is whatever she does to you, whatever the other actor does to you, you can't hit her. He said, what are you, crazy? Why would I hit her? I said, just keep that somehow in your mind that the other actor is there, you can't hit them, and you can't leave the scene. And then I whispered to Zach, go in there and grab him and try to get at his crotch and do whatever you can, and just refuse to leave and just keep talking.
I had a towel around me.
But every word of dialogue, they made up. Every word of that brilliant dialogue. And I think we did 3 or 4 versions, and the first one was the one we used. It was perfect, and it was the easiest thing I've ever done in my life.
I saw something that nobody saw, though. I watched Michael's eyes as I walked towards him, and he wasn't looking at my face.
But I have to say that when I experienced Zach getting into the bath, coming out naked and getting in the bathtub, it was so fantastically unbelievable to me what was happening that I was just watching the reaction on my face now, and I bet the greatest trained actor in the world couldn't have a reaction like that, because this was a genuine thing. It was a tremendous unbelief and disgust combined.
By the way, the person responsible for Michael being in the movie is Jack Nicholson. My brother was in Israel for many years, and after I think 2 years of not seeing him, I was sitting at the Old World on Sunset Boulevard outside on a table and walking along Sunset Boulevard, and I'm sitting with Jack Nicholson, we're having coffee, and it's an afternoon, and suddenly there's my brother in Hollywood, in California, on the street on Sunset Boulevard, and I know that he's in Israel, and I haven't seen him in 2 years, I haven't heard he's coming here, and he's fixing his glasses. And he's trying to fix some kind of thing with that thing where he's stuck in the side of the glasses, that there's a safety pin because the thing had come out, and he's doing that. And I'm saying, Michael, meaning, my God, you're here, what are you doing here? And he says, without anything else, he says, these glasses are all messed up because, you can't fix the thing. Because the thing came. I said, hello, what are you doing in California? He said, you see the glasses? It doesn't run, and Nicholson said to me, this is your brother? and I said, yeah, and he said, you've got gold here. He said, you've got comic gold. Just put him in front of a camera, give him an outline, don't try to make him say anything. Just set him up and he'll go. And
The problem always is that when I'm serious about things, people find it funny.
that's the problem for you, that's the pleasure for the rest of us.
No, I love working with Henry because the freedom is extraordinary, you know. In most things, you're right, that you're contained, you know, and it's just like liberation, you know.
What about you?
The answer is it's extraordinary because the
That's
freedom
it for Zach. Now you'll hear the opposite side.
Well, from my point of view, the acting was very simple to do because I just got there and said what I normally would say. I don't have any training as an actor otherwise. Also, I don't have an ego as an actor, so when Henry shouted at me or complained, I didn't have the reaction other people did. He was the director, I did the best I could what he told me to do, which mostly was just to let me do my own thing anyway. However, in Sitting Ducks, the problem I had was a different one. It was that I was involved with the business of the movie, with the investment, with the spending of the money. When the guy was filming me, I was concerned about the fight I had with him about how much overtime he was getting.
He set the budget down, I think, for $300,000.
Mm-hmm. And subsequently, when I first acted in a movie not related to Henry, I thought, this is terrific, I have nothing to do here. You're only acting a small portion of the time. Even when I wasn't acting, there was when I was supposed to be acting before I acted, there was a stand-in standing there, and so I didn't have to be involved with the whole production. I just had to get out for a few moments and act.
So he got fired.
I did not get fired.
Yes, you did.
You got threatened.
Oh, I got fired in some subsequent movie, which I never wanted to be in the first place.
What's the name of the director, the English director?
You're not talking about Nicholas Roeg, are you?
No,
Insignificant.
Nick Road he did great with.
Right.
Because Nick Road let him improvise around the character of Einstein.
When the writer wasn't around.
What?
When the writer wasn't around,
Yeah.
sure, I did more or less the script when he was there.
Yeah, but what's his name who did the remake of Lolita?
Oh, Adrian Lyne.
Adrian Lyne saw Sitting Ducks and said, "Your brother's a genius." I said, "Thank you. I think he is." He said, "I want him for this movie. I want him for this movie. What's it called? With what's her name's legs crossed? What? Fatal Attraction." And I want him to play. I wanted to play Michael Douglas's lawyer. So I said, "Listen, I got to explain something to you about my brother." And Adrian said, "I saw the movie. I saw Sitting Ducks. He's brilliant. There's nothing to say." I said, "I just think I should explain." He said, "No, he's going to be sensational." So he got the job of playing Michael Douglas's lawyer, and I got 4 phone calls the same afternoon from Sherry Lansing, who was the head of the studio, from, what's his name, the director?
Adrian Lyne.
From Adrian, from Michael Douglas, my friend, who was the star of the movie. All of them had agreed to him being in this little but significant part, and I've forgotten who the 4th was, apologizing to me. And I said, "Why? What are you apologizing?" They fired him. Because when he walked down some hill with Michael Douglas, he had dialogue about the court case. And he started improvising and creating things that...
Yeah, the 4th guy whose name we don't remember, he's the guy who actually called me up and told me I'm fired. and he explained, "What's the matter with you? You can't even follow the lines."
Well, knowing that you guys made up your own dialogue for this movie, I have to ask, you know, there's an unusual fixation on sex and masturbation and all, because how autobiographical is that material?
Well,
Go ahead, tell him.
of course,
All yours.
As Henry takes people as they really are, he knows that I was quite obsessed with sex at that time.
And masturbation particularly, right?
Well, yes, that was what led to my great ability at sex. And so
He arrived used up.
in fact, when Henry was in Israel, he had a crew left over from some film project he was doing, and he asked me if I would just sit there and be interviewed and give my theories about sex. And
We've got a 45-minute incredible.
yeah, he said most people are intimidated by the process of sitting there and getting filmed, and of course it didn't bother me any. I just went to talk as usual, and then he made a film out of it. And when I came to Hollywood a couple of years later, I saw people looking at me very strangely.
Because they'd all seen that
Particularly
film.
women, because he had this film is nothing but me for 45 minutes incessantly, lively talking about sex. And he says, "This is my brother," and he showed this film.
So, what we also tried to do with the film was make a kind of comedy about the obsessiveness, at least from my point of view, about people's obsessiveness with sex and of their obsessiveness with money. And I think these actors were just sensational, you know, in conveying that. I mean, it was just incredible. Yeah, the girl, Patrice Townsend, who I was not yet married to and not yet divorced from. For that, you have to see my film always. But she also, I was stunned in watching it, realizing how natural and good she was at this part, and I just gave her this, you know, difficult things to do. For them, it was just playing off themselves in a way which is not just. I mean, it's quite amazing. But she and, what's her name? Irene Forrest, who unfortunately is not with us anymore. Yeah, she just died last year.
I didn't know it either.
Yeah. They were wonderful. And in that environment, they were just so easy to work with. And you just put them, I mean, it was the easiest time I've ever had. You know, you just put them in a thing and just say, do this, do this, do this, and then you sit back and watch. And then you've got an editing room with hundreds of choices to make.
Well, I'd like to
You mentioned Always earlier, and it wasn't very much later after this film that you started a series of these very personal films with yourself as the star, Always, Someone to Love, New Year's Day, and so forth. I was wondering, which had a very less traditional narrative than this film did, and I was wondering if this film...
Much to many people's disappointment.
And my question was, was this film, did that influence that decision in any way, either by giving you the financial freedom to do so, or by having worked in this sort of, having worked on a more narrative film like this, did it make you realize that you wanted to focus on a different type of...
No, I always knew I wanted to focus on a different type, and as I said, I tried with A Safe Place and Tracks to make poetic films, or films that reflected my sensibility, films that were more in keeping with the films that were important to me, that were had been coming out as I came of age, the films of Fellini or Ingmar Bergman or, you know, Antonioni and so on. And I couldn't get away with it in my first two films. So, but once this succeeded, it didn't make me want to make more of these films. Though I did make a sequel and then couldn't figure out how to cut it together. There is a sequel to this film called
Lucky
Ducks, which is the only film I've never completed. That's a complicated thing, but I disappointed many of my fans from this movie by doing precisely what you're talking about, going into romantic angst and emotional things. And I mean, Mel Brooks and what's his partner? Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks have practically not spoken to me since. They loved this movie so much. They thought they had another guy who was going to be doing this kind of comedies, and I made Always about the end of my marriage with my ex-wife, who's the same person who was in this, and that I think is a much more important film in every way, from my point of view.
I don't.
Though you don't. And certainly Michael actually, my brother has actually told me that the only good film I've ever made was Sitting Ducks.
No, that's not what I told you.
And you like A Safe Place a little bit.
And Tracks.
And Tracks. So my first 3 movies, and then it's been 17 downhill ever since. But yeah, I just did not want to do, this film was done to get back in the picture, to find an audience, because my first 2 films were what I considered to be heroic efforts at trying to make serious films in a culture that wasn't looking for serious films. They, you know, so I was always trying to get back to explore human relationships. And what this did do for me, I would say, is that it made me understand that you could add comedy a certain way and that I don't think is reflected in my first two films, to serious films, and make a kind of hybrid, which I think I've been doing. We just made The M Word about menopause, there's a lot of funny. It's a comedy, but it's a serious subject, and I think maybe I hadn't said this before or thought this out before, so this kind of a form is helpful in a way that I didn't expect. But I think that the failure of my first two films, and then the success of this, made me tap dance a little bit and realize, don't take yourself so seriously. It doesn't have to be just comedy, which I started off, I should say, as a stand-up comedian with Richie Pryor. I mean, so I come from comedy. But when I came to filmmaking, I wanted to be Fellini. And there's not a lot of jokes, you know. And I think this film helped me realize, which I've never said before or fully thought out before, that you could make serious films with a sense of humor. And my films have been increasingly successful and gained larger and larger audiences, and I think that may be a large part of the reason, because I don't think I've sacrificed, ever since, the principal desire to make movies that tell the truth about our lives and make people feel certain things about themselves and feel better about all the complicated things in life. But I have not avoided humor, which I now realize in retrospect that with my first two films, I think probably I did. I have been planning a film for the two of you, which you know about, called Old Boys, and was going to shoot it even in connection with this, and was going to ask Michael if we could use the apartment, his apartment, here. Right. And he looks at Linda, and look at his expression. Do you see what gold is? You don't need, you got a 35mm, you got a camera on this, and what do you need? You think
You wanted to ask about using the apartment. You never bothered telling me you wanted me in the film.
I told you that I filmed for you and
You
Zach.
never told me about it.
He told me about it. So you should have known.
Oh, Linda just explained you don't read your
Oh,
emails.
you don't transmit the emails to me.
Whoa. Oh, we see. I email Linda for Michael because he doesn't read his emails. I did several times. And you give them to him and he... Ah. Okay, let me say it officially here for the first time. There's a film that I want to make. It's about a small group of older people.
Oh, that I never heard about. Oh.
Welcome home, Michael.
The two main characters are these two. It is called Old Boys. It is about a group of older gentlemen who are criminals, who decide that there is one more job to pull. And they get together, we don't see the job, they get together to plan it. And that's the film that I have in mind.
That you told me about, where the whole film consists of us talking and planning the tape, correct?
Right.
And based on what went on in the killers and in the killing.
Correct.
So of course I knew about that.
I sure think he knew about it.
So I hopefully there will be one more Zach Norman, Michael, and me.
What do you mean one more? What does that mean?
And in that film, Zach, what I plan to do is use a lot of the footage from all those years,
That's
including the interview with him in Israel.
Oh, absolutely. That's great.
Well, I hope you guys will come back again with that one once it's done. And I think it's getting about time to wrap this one up. But thank you so much for coming out.
You've been wonderfully patient. Thank you.